the Players' Championship, he would be the last person in. So him making top 8 this weekend was absolutely huge as he's able to acquire some more Open Series points and really just spread the gap, create some space between him and the people that are underneath him so he can basically lock up a seed to Roanoke at the end of the year.
Yeah, the strongest thing that this top 8 will do for Brad is it won't just create space between him and the players beneath him, is that he'll actually leapfrog a lot of the players who are ahead of him. I would expect at the end of this weekend Brad to be in 8th or even 7th.
And that doesn't even account for the Legacy tournament that we know Brad is skilled in that format. You know, he's been working on Sneak and Show for a while, but he also played the Jeskai deck that Brian Brundwin, he played like a version of that deck last weekend at Grand Prix New Jersey to a solid finish. So I imagine he'll be running back something very similar to that. So we'll be underway here in just a second. Both players finish shuffling up their decks, and this should be a lot of fun to watch between these two great players. An easy feature match for us to pick this morning.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaheen with his trademark Esper control style deck, it's almost Esper Planeswalker mid-range in a lot of ways. He has a complement of 8 Planeswalkers in the main, backed up by 4 Thoughtseize, 4 Dissolve, 5 Draw Spells, and a full 4 copies of End Hostilities.
It's a lot of those.
Even when your sweeper costs 1 additional mana and suddenly can be countered, it's not going to stop Shaheen from running 4 of them.
If you follow Shaheen on social media or ever read his articles, he was very vocal about his displeasure of not having a 4-mana Wrath effect. They, for the time being, have switched Wrath effects to 5 mana. Don't know how long that's going to be, but we have End Hostilities instead of a card like Wrath of God or Day of Judgment or Supreme Verdict. All cards Shaheen has been casting whenever they're illegal. So he was pretty upset about that, but he's clearly found some things that do work. And, you know, his build is different than normal, but you just have to, you know, shift some things and switch some things up, and he's happy with his configuration now.
Well, I think the current philosophy on what sweepers are going to happen is that you can have them at 4 mana, but we will not always have one at 4 mana. You will get them at 5, but at 5 they'll get some upside. So, you know, End Hostilities also can destroy equipment and bestowed creatures. I believe there's a black 5-mana sweeper that has the ability to destroy all dragons and non-dragons. So there's, you know, in the right deck, it can be better than just a sweeper.
Yep. Both players are going to take a look at each other's deck list here in just a moment, I imagine. Though play may be underway quickly. Brad's going to take a look at Shaheen's deck. When we do have updates for you guys on other matches, Aaron Barrett, #1 overall seed against Stephen DuPaul, we will let you know that one, as well as Harlan Fear and Bobby Whitehouse and Van Wyn and Kevin Jones. So any updates that we have, we'll provide with you as we make our way through the quarterfinals here from Richmond. Don't forget, we've got Legacy action for you later today. We also got premium giveaways on the way soon. Matthias will have the first question for you now of the rules. We'll alternate as we do through 3, 6, and 12 months. It looks like Brad is going to take a mulligan very quickly here this morning. So he is not happy with what he's found.
Yeah, Shaheen's on the play here. He's kept a 7-card hand. In this matchup, a lot of it, if you think about this as a mid-range mirror, one thing we had a mid-range mirror yesterday between Mardu and Abzan for a spot in the top 8. A lot of it is getting ahead on the board because these cards, both players' cards, are so good at creating value once they're on the board, but they're really good at 1-for-1ing, but maybe not 2-for-1ing. Once one player gets 1 or 2 permanents ahead, it's very hard for the other player to actually come back from that spot. You know, there's no sweeper really on either side of this board. I mean, Shaheen has End Hostilities, sure, but a lot of Brad's threats are going to be pretty diversified. So, you know, you can't End Hostilities away an Elspeth and a Butcher of the Horde at the same time. So I would say the goal here is to be the person who gets more permanents on the board quicker. And I think you'll see a lot of the games snowball in the direction of the player that gets out the fastest.
Brad's looking at 6 cards, and I think 2 of them are chained to the rocks, which is not great. So Shaheen's going to play a Temple of Lightman. He's going to scry. We are underway here in game 1 of our quarterfinals. Nelson with a Sandstep Citadel. A Polluted Delta there for Shaheen. He'll pass the turn back. Nelson looks like maybe another tri-land here. We'll see in just a moment. He's going to sacrifice a Bloodstained Mire, play a copy of Sylvan Caryatid. That's his first spell and the first spell of the game. Soorani's going to play a Flooded Strand. You see he's got a Dissolve in his hand, so he is ready. He could also play Ashiok here.
Yeah, so the Planeswalkers that Shaheen has, 3 Ashiok Nightmare Weaver, 3 Elspeth Sun's Champion, and 2 Sorin Solemn Visitors. He does have Ashiok and Sorin in his opener, and I think that's one of the great ways he can, as I said, pretty much get ahead on permanents. When you think about Sylvan Caryatid, it's not really a threat, but Shaheen's going to start with Ashiok. If he gets a Sorin down before Brad gets another creature here, that will be pretty problematic for Brad.
You see Brad already turn over cards very quickly, and those are some nice ones. Siege Rhino is one that Shaheen can bring back. Ajani is gone from the deck, and there's also a Nomad Outpost there. Nelson going to play Butcher of the Horde. I think he may have drawn that one for the turn, as Ashiok is going to bite the dust now. So Shaheen left the window open. Brad was able to take care of it, sacks the Sylvan Caryatid to get that thing off of the table. Shaheen's going to play a Temple to see. Top card's going to go to the bottom.
And you see Brad just aware of how important this board presence is. No second thought about sacrificing that Sylvan Caryatid to give Butcher of the Horde haste. He did not want Shaheen to be able to make Siege Rhino that next turn in any way.
Butcher going to come across for 5 now. So we'll see if Soorani does have an answer to this. He's going to play an Urborg. You see his hand. He's got an Ashiok over there, Dissolve 2. Not sure if he has a removal spell just yet, though. That might be the bigger problem. Also has a copy of Dig Through Time in hand.
Yeah, so Brad's stuck on 3 lands here. He still is ahead, so you're going to need a kill spell of some sort from Shaheen, which I don't believe he has at the moment. Because Brad's not making additional threats right now, Shaheen does have an opportunity to recover.
Another Chain to the Rocks was the draw here for Nelson. He's going to attack for 5 more, so he's going to go down to 8. Butcher does hit really, really hard. Here's end of turn Dig Through Time.
And this might be what Shaheen needs to find an answer to the Butcher of the Horde. As long as he gets a 6th land that's untapped, he does have an Elspeth in his hand. He can use that to take care of the Butcher.
Hero's Downfall, one of the cards that Shaheen was able to find from the Dig Through Time. So 2 cards added to the grip. He'll untap the 5 lands. He'll draw a card for the turn. There's land number 6 in the form of Flooded Strand.
And it's the 2nd white mana he needs if he chooses to go for the Elspeth route. He also has Dissolve and Hero's Downfall, so he may just downfall the Butcher and leave up Dissolve.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's his line of play, and that's what it looks like he's going to work towards. There's an attack. Absolutely not.
Yeah. With the Shaheen at 5, his hand's pretty forced here.
So that'll take care of that. Here's a Wooded Foothills is going to get sacrificed. Nelson going to dig up a land. I have a feeling it'll be a forest. There that is. So that'll give him all 4 colors of mana.
Yep.
Wonderful mana base. But speaking with Brad yesterday after he drew in the top 8, he said, my only losses were due to my mana base. That's it. Said he's like, when the mana comes together, the deck is very, very hard to beat. And the mana comes together quite a bit here. Looks like he's going to play a Courser of Grufix. He will. See if this does resolve. Shaheen taking a look at that Dissolve there. Giving it a thought. He's going to cast it. Take a look at the top card from Scry. That card's going to go to the bottom.
If you were with us yesterday, you saw a great match between Brad Nelson against Control being piloted by Jim Davis. It was blue-white Control, in which Brad also got into the spot where the Control deck started to run away with the game, but he was able to use the main deck Lightning Strikes to steal the game out from under Jim. We may be in looking at a similar board here. Brad does have 1 Lightning Strike already in his hand. If he can, I believe, if he can find a second one.
Yeah, doesn't have one in his hand right now. His hand right now is a couple copies of Chain to the Rocks, a Crackling Doom, a Siege Rhino, and he just drew a copy of Sarkhan for the turn.
So he has a Crackling Doom, so that's half there.
Well, Rhino's going to put him down to 1.
Right, and Shaheen's deck's light on life gain, so Brad actually has lethal burn right here with that Crackling Doom.
Yep. This is definitely some trouble here for Shaheen. I mean, those hits from the Butcher of the Horde were a big deal. And Brad's deck has a lot more reach than you would think it would. You know, the Rhino, Crackling Doom deals 2, Lightning Strike deals 3. He's actually got more ways to deal damage outside of his creatures than you would think. Elspeth's going to tick down. Shaheen's going to play a Sorin. That's a big deal. Plus it gets you for 6, but more importantly, gains 6 life back. He's back up to 7. He is out of burn range now. That is a huge, huge deal. He's also going to play an Ashiok. Now the shields are down, but nothing terrible can happen. He's going to turn over 3 cards. Satyr Wayfinder among them. Nelson will untap and draw, but he can't deal lethal now. Yep.
Shaheen doing a great job of being aware of what kind of outs Brad has and prioritizing his answers to them. If he doesn't make the lifelink play with Sorin there, Brad will take the game off Crackling Doom. Shaheen recognized that, and you see he gets game 1 as a result.
Back to the booth we come, as it is time for the first of many Star City Games premium giveaways. He's going to have your question. The rules are simple. Get your Twitters open. Use the hashtag of hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live. And we'll announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round. Probably an easy question to start, but do keep in mind that all contests and giveaways here on Star City Games are at the sole discretion of Star City Games. In no way, are our contest affiliated with Twitch.tv, though we do appreciate them for allowing us to broadcast on their fantastic and ever-growing network. Ask an easy one.
All right, so one thing which is really showing up in Standard is we have a lot of these mid-range decks focused around Planeswalkers. Both Brad Nelson and Shaheen Soorani have 3 different Planeswalkers in their deck. So what I want to know is about Brad's deck, which is normally you'd expect 2 of these Planeswalkers out of a Mardu style deck, but what green Planeswalker is he playing today?
And Brad does have a one of green Planeswalker. It's got green in the mana cost. If you can't name it, hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following at SCG Live, and we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our quarterfinal round as we will head back down to the match. Take a look at the sideboards here. We will start with Brad Nelson with his 2 Utter Ends, his 3 copies of Xenagos the Reveler, 4 Anger of the Gods, 2 Hostilities, a Glare of Heresy, 2 Thoughtseizes, and an additional Ajani Mentor of Heroes. What do we like here and why?
More Planeswalkers, more robust of threats. So you saw how important getting out on the board first was for Brad there. He had a hand that by most accounts was really a bust-up of a hand. He played Butcher of the Horde on turn 3. That's great, and really had no follow-up. He had a bunch of dead cards and removal spells, and the Butcher almost won the game by itself for Brad. So he wants more cards, I think, that can do that, and he wants more cards that can really are efficient answers to Shaheen's ways to get out on the board. So I would say, looking at what we have here, Xenagos the Reveler looks great here. It's a 4 mana Planeswalker, so it costs less than some of his other threats, like his Sarkhan in the main. I think you'll see him bring those in. He also needs to mix up his removal spells. His Crackling Dooms and Chain to the Rocks are pretty poor here, whereas cards like Thoughtseize, cards like Glare of Heresy, even Utter End is much better positioned against what Shaheen is doing.
Other side of things, you're going to see 3 copies of Prognostic Sphinx, 4 copies of Nyx's Leash Ram, 1 Bioblight, 1 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Negates, then 4 copies of Drown in Sorrow. Unsurprisingly, you're not going to find a lot of cards that are targeting Brad's deck, as Brad's deck is more of a new one here this weekend, though Disdainful Stroke is a nice one in this matchup. Yeah,
I think Disdainful Stroke's okay. All of Brad's business cards cost 4 or more, so having a 2-mana answer to that is really great for Shaheen. What I think is actually decent in his deck is the 3 copies of Prognostic Sphinx, and that's actually a way, while it's not, you said there wasn't anything targeted for the mid-range matchup, but I actually think this is targeted for that matchup because it's a card that's not answerable. And a lot of times, if you notice that game, both players ended the game with cards still in their hand. It's because it's not about 2-for-1ing here, it's about getting out onto the board faster. So Prognostic Sphinx, the discard a card ability, which lets you give it hexproof, is free, and I think a lot of times Shaheen will have a card to discard to it. The Sphinx is very good at taking down Planeswalkers. It's good at dodging all the removal that Brad has that isn't Crackling Doom. I do think Shaheen will board it in.
I think game 1 went as expected. I expect Shaheen to win game 1 of this matchup a heavy percentage of the time. It's just, even though Lightning Strike was able to deal some damage and Crackling Doom may have gotten close to stealing that game, by and large, I think we're going to see Shaheen win that one quite a bit. Brad did end the game with a couple copies of Chain of the Rocks in his hand. Those are simply mulligans. They don't do anything. So the matchup does change quite a bit after board. I wouldn't be surprised to see Brad tied up here at all.
Yeah, he had 2 Chain of the Rocks and a Crackling Doom in his hand at the end of the game, which there are some great things that Brad has going. That turn 3 Butcher the Horde was really scary for Shaheen.
Yeah. Kills the Planeswalker, then dealt him 10 points of damage.
Right.
Butcher is, it's really powerful. Clearly can have haste too. It's just a really, really good card, and it did almost steal the game. As we do have a quick update for you guys here. Aaron Barrich, #1 overall seed, the young gun, does win game #1 here over Stephen DuPaul. So Barrich with his Obzon aggro deck up a game over DuPaul playing Mardu mid-range.
And that shouldn't be too much of a surprise. If you didn't get a chance to see Barrich's deck, we would love to show it to you again. We showed it a couple times yesterday. When he wins in a landslide.
It doesn't take long. It does not take long for Aaron to get the job done at all. And I imagine he took a lot of people by surprise yesterday with his 3 copies of Gather Courage in the main deck. And heck, even the 4th one in the sideboard. People were probably assuming that he was only playing one of those things. I imagine the Become Immense in his deck, that the Singleton was also pretty good, as we watched it be good against Brad Nelson when he was playing for top 8. So,
and this is something that we've seen in a lot of, I think, our up-and-coming deck builders this year. If you look at, like, Aaron Barrich and Tom Ross, I think they've really capitalized on the strength of of spells that can cost 1 or 0 in both formats. If you think about reasons like why Infect is good, why this blue-white heroic deck that Tom played did well, and really why Aaron's deck does well, it's that they can play more spells in a turn than their opponents often can, and they really capitalize on it.
And they're certainly able to play some unique spells that take people by surprise as Game 2 is underway here. A Sand Steps Citadel here for Nelson. Soorani is going to play a Temple of Deceit. A little scry action here. Top card will go to the bottom. We go back Nelson's way. Temple of Plenty the draw. He's going to play a Mountain. Carry added for acceleration and fixing. And we'll go back Shaheen's way. This is a Despise, so we'll see a hand here with a Glare. Also a Courser, which will be selected. Crackling Doom, which Brad has left in. And then you've also got a Force and a Temple of Plenty. So if Shaheen was planning on boarding in Prognostic Sphinx, Brad has an answer.
Right, and so that, I want to talk about reasons why Brad has left in Crackling Doom. It is an answer to Prognostic Sphinx. It actually is also a very elegant answer to Sorin Solemn Visitor. Now, if Shaheen knows Brad has it, he can play Sorin in a way that it does not get hurt by Crackling Doom. He can play it, plus it, then minus it the next turn, and then the Sorin will still survive. But if you just play it and make a Vampire, Crackling Doom takes care of the Vampire, deals 2 to its controller, which is redirected to Sorin. It actually 1-for-1s with the spell.
Shaheen's going to play a Temple of Deceit after that Despise. Looking to scry here. Top card's going to go to the bottom. This is a big draw step for Brad. He's got some 4 mana spells that he could draw, like this Siege Rhino. That could be backbreaking. That's going to come in and drain and gain, as we do have 2 updates for you guys. Number 1, Bobby Whitehouse does win game number 1 over Harlan Fear. That's our 6 versus 3. Whitehouse is playing Green-Black Constellation. Fear is playing the Jeskai deck. And then Kevin Jones, who's also playing Jeskai, just a different take. He's more of a Jeskai aggro deck against Van Wyn. So Kevin Jones, number 2 overall seed, undefeated through yesterday, currently up a game.
Yeah, and that Jeskai hybrid combo, I really do think that Green-Black Constellation is among its toughest matchups, especially if the Green-Black player has cards like Stain the Mind in the sideboard. I don't believe Whitehouse has that, but even then, the combination of the fact that the plan A of the deck works so little in that matchup makes it really hard. You're playing a really inconsistent combo deck, is what it often feels like.
Shaheen finally found the white mana in Temple of Silence, so you got to see him scry for Nelson. Flooding a touch. He does have a Siege Round in his hand, and he's thinking about casting it, and he's going to, hoping that Shaheen does not have a Dissolve, but he does, so Counterspell is going to take care of that. Take a look at the top card, leave it on top, pass the turn back over to Soorani. Soorani's draw is a Dig Through Time. Doesn't have a 5th land. Nelson will draw a card, play a Wooded Foothills, he'll pass the turn back.
So after that original Despise, Shaheen left Brad without any threats. Brad having back-to-back Siege Rhinos was a good start, but you see here, it's not posing much of a challenge for Shaheen. The game's all about getting a threat down on the board, and while Shaheen doesn't have any threats of his own, it's going to take a lot of threats from Brad.
Brad going to sacrifice a Wooded Foothill, search up a mountain.
He has to get through a Hero's Downfall, an Utter End, and end hostilities that Shaheen could cast at any point here once he gets one more white source. Not to mention that as Shaheen casts these kill spells, he's building his way toward a really nice dig through time.
Yep.
It looks difficult for Brad to make his way through this hand.
Brad's draw was an Elspeth, which is not so bad, I suppose. Though you can see Shaheen's hand, he has answers rolled up for that. He has an Utter End to be able to kill it when he'd like to. He also has a Hero's Downfall, so 2 ways to kill Planeswalkers. Not to mention, end hostilities can clear away the tokens.
Yeah, he has 2 Hero's Downfalls and an Utter End, so the Elspeth isn't a problem. Because it doesn't have Dissolve, Brad will still get to keep the 1/1s around, so while he'll lose the Elspeth, and I think he'd expect to lose it, the fact that he gets something else left over is probably about as good as he can do here.
Yeah, the tough situation here, I think, if you're Brad, too, is that, I think Brad is thinking to himself on these turns as he's shuffling his cards back and forth, I'd rather not cast this Elspeth, or, I hope you don't have a counter spell, but I think Brad is just priced into casting every spell that he draws and just hoping for the best as Shaheen's going to draw a Plains, and we'll see if he wants to cast end hostilities, and he does. Clear everything away. Now, again, this is an opening here for Nelson, if he can take advantage, which he did.
Huge draw for Brad there.
Yep.
He had one. Well, these Planeswalkers are actually very good for him because when Shaheen kills them, Brad always gets something.
Yep. Island the draw. There's Hero's Downfall.
See Shaheen, though, with a lot of generic answers, he still has another Hero's Downfall, another End Hostilities left in his hand, and then Dig Through Time to go help him find his own threat.
Yeah, it's just the most Shaheen style of Magic ever, right? Just kill all your stuff, win with Planeswalkers, cast a draw spell somewhere in here.
I still just think his deck feels so much like a mid-range deck to me.
It's a mid-range deck in disguise.
Yeah, it is control colors, but if you look at it, it's just what you expect out of a mid-range deck. Some planeswalkers that are a decent amount of difficult to answer threats, and then a lot of generic removal.
And dig through time.
And dig through time.
Which is quite powerful.
That's
He's
what you
casting
get.
one now.
You get that when you play blue. That's one of the better parts.
And, yeah, he's always playing blue. We know that. Gonna pick a couple of cards here. I think one of them is a dissolve. So we're gonna send some cards to the bottom. Dig will add 2 to the grip. Draw step will be a 3rd new card. Do you think he can beat a 2/2? He could probably beat a 2/2.
Well, you can take hits off a 2/2 for a while.
Coming on in, that's dead. His hand must be really good if he's Heroes Downfalling a 2/2. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, well, eventually he's going to have to do that. You see he does have 2 more copies of End Hostilities. It looks like Negate, Dissolve, Dig Through Time, and 2 End Hostilities.
Brad drew a copy of Elspeth for the turn. See if he wants to cast this now, maybe try to wait. Gonna take a look at a couple things, see what Shaheen removed here with Dig Through Time. Heroes Downfalls, Dissolve among those cards. Trying to see if the coast is clear. And I think it's pretty clear.
Yeah. What Shaheen does have is he has a great combination if Brad goes for the Elspeth. He can negate, and that will put a 4th card in his graveyard, which means he can also dig through time on Brad's end step.
If you'd like to sign up for our Legacy Open, we have about 20 minutes left in registration.
There's a land, there's Elspeth. And absolutely not. Negate that, pass the turn back. And a dig yet again. Shaheen is really starting to pull away here.
Yeah. Now he's not just killing Brad's cards, he's drawing extra cards while doing it. And it looks like he has finally found his own threat. He has a copy of Elspeth Sun's Champion in his hand now.
Now, Brad, in his hand, to his credit, he does have a copy of Glare of Heresy, but, you know, that oftentimes doesn't work out the way you want it to. You know, they get the 3 creatures, you glare their Elspeth, and now you have to worry about the 3 1/1s, which actually are kind of annoying. And Shaheen could, like, bob and weave a little bit, but he's just going to play Elspeth, get his soldier tokens, and just move forward accordingly.
Well, these decks are actually on the same game plan, right? They're trying to win the 1-for-1 game. And just in the same way that Shaheen had to both utter end and then end hostilities on a Brad's Elspeths, he's going to have to do the same for Shaheen's. He'll have to glare it, and then he'll have to find a way to deal with the 1/1s.
Glare going to be coming here in just a moment. I think Brad is trying to figure out how he wants to tap the mana. He's found a way, so that's going to go away. Play a Nomad Outpost and just pass the turn back over to Shaheen. Shaheen will draw. It's a copy of Dissolve. That might be the check mark on this game as he attacks for 3.
Well, Elspeth, you can't understate the damage it's done here. Brad's hand last turn was a pair of Crackling Dooms, which these 1/1 soldiers really put a hamper on.
Yeah, they don't care. Not one bit. Here's Dig Through Time again. And that's the thing about Dig Through Time, much like Treasure Cruise too. We saw Ali Antrazi use this to his advantage, and Shaheen's doing the same thing, which is, yeah, sometimes these spells are really expensive. That doesn't matter. They're still super powerful.
Yeah.
It's just paying 7 for a Dig Through turn.
It's still an instant, especially within Dig Through Time's case.
Yeah. 3 damage going to come. Well, 3 damage is attacking. 2 damage will come across. The Sylvan Caryatid's out there to stop a little bit of that action.
You see Brad with a pretty ineffectual hand, and Shaheen all the way up to 7 cards at the moment. He has the 4th dig, Dissolve, Dissolve, Negate. It's the wall of permission that Brad has to get through may just be too tall here.
Yeah, I mean, this is a situation right where Shaheen doesn't even really need to make a move. Like, he's casting Dig Through Time right now just to further his position along, but he doesn't really have to move at all at this point. His hand is awesome. He's got some counter magic. He's got some removal, and Elspeth, just in case anything goes wrong. Gonna add a couple of cards here with the 4th dig, put the rest to the bottom. Draw a mystery card for the turn. Looks like a Disdainful Stroke was added to his hand along with a land. Make sure that he does make his land drops. There's an Ashiok as well, so this can force a little bit of action too.
He's just finding more ways to win here.
Siege Rhino, one of the cards that turned over, 2 lands in Sansep Citadel and a Wooded Foothills. Maybe Nelson's gonna pull the trigger on these Crackling Dooms finally. Well, it looks like he's just gonna take 2 damage for now.
Yeah, I think he wants to wait 1 turn. Shaheen has 8 cards in hand, so if Brad doesn't play anything, he can get Shaheen to discard at least. But you're right, there's an Ashiok he has to deal with, there's 3 1/1s he has to deal with, and Shaheen's on 7 cards. Shaheen's discarding cards like End Hostilities. That's just not a great thing for Brad to make his way through.
I wouldn't be feeling comfortable if my opponent is discarding End Hostilities against my creature deck. Doesn't really care very much about what I'm doing.
He doesn't. What that means is that here's what that does to me. Shaheen does not believe that Brad is ever going to have creatures in play.
Yeah.
And if Shaheen has that belief, well, that means his hand is, well,
It's really
that
good.
It means he probably has answers to your creatures
Yes.
from here on out.
Here's an attack. 2 damage will come through again, as you have to imagine. Nelson will be blocking Sylvan with Sylvan Caryatid. Ashak's going to tick up. Couple of Planeswalkers there. It looks like a Xenagos, a Thoughtseize, and a land.
Saying before, we have seen situations where Brad was able to use burn spells to get him out of this situation. That was a game 1 where Brad still had lightning strikes. Without that, 13 is, I don't think he can reach 13. It's also a little higher of a too high of a number for him to burn someone down from.
We also have to keep in mind the situation, too, where Jim Davis didn't know it was in Brad's deck. He hadn't seen a lightning strike at that point. So
No, it was beautiful. Jim went for an Unstep Prolic Ancient, and in response, Brad cast 4 copies of Lightning Strike with Jim at 12.
Yep. But we're in the top 8 now, and Shaheen has access to the deck list, so he knows exactly what's in Brad's deck. Crackling Doom's going to redirect. It's going to go over to Ashiok. Nelson's going to untap. He will draw. Shaheen has to discard a copy of Ashiok.
I mean, that's just it. Brad's casting his spells, Crackling Doom, and they are ineffectual enough that Shaheen, despite having multiple counterspells in his hand, is letting them all resolve.
Yeah, by all means, you can do that. Shaheen is determining the terms of engagement right now. That's a Bloodstained Mire. Nelson will pass the turn back. Shaheen will draw a card. It looks like it's a discard spell. It's a Thoughtseize. Nelson will have to show his hand and what he's trying to work towards. We can see it here. There's an Ajani Mentor of Heroes, and it looks like 2 copies of Crackling Doom.
Can't cast all of them in response. I'll probably just let Shaheen have his pick.
He doesn't want to show him his hand, but I think he's about to. Yep.
Yep,
They're the 3 gold spells.
Shaheen takes a copy of Crackling Doom. Once he can get all these Crackling Dooms out of Brad's hand, then he can maybe make Siege Rhino with this Ashiok. In all honesty, Shaheen's far enough ahead that it probably doesn't matter how he chooses to use his spells here. You see here, he -4s the Ashiok to make Siege Rhino, knowing that Brad has Crackling Doom, which takes care of the Siege Rhino and the Ashiok.
Yeah. But I think if that play actually surfaces, I think we might see Shaheen actually finally use one of his counter spells, because he has the ability to dissolve that and then Disdainful Stroke, a bigger spell like a Butcher, like a Rhino, like an Ajani, because that's how his hand is built right now. So Nelson's going to sacrifice the Bloodstained Mire, dig out a land.
Yeah. I would guess that if Shaheen's being extra patient here, he lets the Crackling Doom happen, loses both creatures. He then still has double counterspell for whatever Brad can draw, and he can just cast another Ashiok next turn. It hardly matters. I mean, some plays are better than others, but it's very difficult for Shaheen to play this one wrong.
He's going to dissolve the Crackling Doom. Top card's going to go to the bottom from the scry. Nelson will get to draw a card here.
Doesn't mean Shaheen doesn't have a Dissolve up anymore. He does have a Disdainful Stroke and Negate in his hand, so Brad would have to have a creature spell that costs 3 or less here to have it be relevant. I don't think he plays any of those, so Shaheen should have him covered.
Yeah, the only card that he can really draw in this situation is Courser of Crufix, and Courser just doesn't matter on this board.
He could have 2 5-mana spells. Say he drew another Ajani. The second one would resolve. It would get knocked down by Siege Rhino. There's still problems with that, but
Shaheen's looking at the Negate and the Disdainful Stroke. He's deciding which one to use, and he's going to go with the Negate, so that'll take care of the Planeswalker. Nelson going to play the Courser. Top card of the deck is a Butcher. We'll pass it back over to Shaheen. He'll untap the 2 soldiers and all those land. Looks like he picked up another copy of Dissolve. 3 cards being turned over here. The Butcher, Sylvan Caryatid, and the land. Butcher is going to be back on top of the deck again, as we see from the Courser.
But Shaheen's ahead on the board and has 2 copies of Dissolve. Brad's deck only draws 1 card per turn. I don't believe that he can win from here. He only gets to resolve the 3rd spell, because the first 2 can be dissolved. And I think he'll be dead before that happens.
Soren's going to come in. That's going to tick up. The Rhino is now 5 power and 5 lifelink as well. Draw. Butcher going to try to cast it. That's a dissolve. That is going to do it. Shaheen Soorani's going to win this match over Brad Nelson 2-0. Esper Control is moving on to the top 4, and if you thought Control was dead, you're very wrong.